welcome back to Caps Hockey Review. Back with you again, 4-game edition of the program today. We got a ton to break down. Where it's going to be negative, it's going to be positive. We're going negative to end the show today. It's going to be fun. Let's get into it. Caps Hockey Review, here we go. And we are underway. It is Caps Hockey Review once again. Back with you after a lengthy absence. I didn't intend for this to be a 4-game edition of the program, but certain happenings in Capsland dictate that it needed to be. Why? Well, I was kind of waiting for a win. If I'm being very honest here, I didn't want to come on here and have it just be me spewing venom for a half hour, so I had to wait for a win. And by the way, for those of you watching, I'm aware I look like a hologram. I've messed with the green screen. I've changed the background, obviously. I've done a lot of things, and it's still doing it. If anybody has any tips to make this whole number stop and make me stop looking like a flickering ghost, please let me know. I'd greatly appreciate it. I know it's amateur hour over here. I apologize. Anyway, getting to the things that really matter for this show. The Caps coming off 3 straight losses headed into Thursday night's match with the Carolina Hurricanes. Match, this isn't soccer. This isn't wrestling. I don't know why I said match. It should be match up. Anyway, I'm going to do that a lot today. There's going to be some tangents in here. There's going to be me kind of like slowly working my way around to some weird point in some segments of this. So just bear with me. Please bear with me today. Anyway, 3 hard losses for the Caps. 3 games that, 2 of those are against divisional opponents. You have to find ways to win these games. And this is all part of a bigger issue, I think, for the Caps, which I'll get to at the end. I don't want to give it all away now, but for the Caps, you go to Gotham City, you go to New York, you get absolutely just shellacked by the Rangers. I don't know what that was. You're going against Igor Shesterkin. He's the Vezina Trophy favorite. This year he might be the best goalie in the league. I know there are those out there that say, oh, well, Andrei Vasilevsky. You're right. But look at the team that Shesterkin plays behind and look at the team that Vasilevsky plays behind. It'll make a lot more sense. So, and besides, Vasi's in the conversation pretty much every year. So, it'll be nice to have some fresh blood in there. Anyway, getting to this situation for Washington. 3 big losses against 3 quality opponents. Or 2 quality opponents in the Flyers, but sorry, Flyers fans, it's been a rough year. You got injuries, I get it, but it's been a rough year. Anyway, let's get into it. I'm going to lump these 3 losses together. I'm not going to go through them individually because, quite frankly, the Caps were bad. It was atrocious. They were good in some parts, but for the most part, got to be better. So, that's what we're focusing on today for these 3 games. I'm adjusting the bucket here. Capitals. D-zone play sucks. It's disgusting. And not in the new sense of the word in hockey, meaning good or, whatever. It's bus station bathroom disgusting. It's putrid. It's vile. It shouldn't exist as it is. But it does. Their D-zone play is the root of just about every single one of their problems. D-zone play ain't going to fix your power play. Your power play is still pretty bad. But your PK has been struggling lately. Your 5-on-5 play really sucks. You're giving up a ton of rebounds. Your goalies are getting killed. People are ready for Ilya Samsonov's head on a stake at this point. So what? What is going on? This team can't get out of their own zone. That's what it is. They can't clear the puck out without turning it over. They either ice the puck, which, I mean, we'll take it, whatever, but it's either an icing or they're turning it over in their own end of the ice, which is never good, or they're giving up rebounds, leaving guys open in front of the net. Any way you cut it, their D-zone play, right in front of their own goalie, right in the golden territory, about 10 to 15 feet in front of the crease. They can't keep people out of it. They can't tie a stick up. They can't put a body on somebody. They have been awful. Awful, awful, awful for this Caps team. And getting the puck out. It's a fine line you have to walk if you're trying to dump it out, because you can't obviously shoot it too hard because it's going to be icing, but you got to get it through that D-man on the blue line, and damn it, these guys are good at keeping pucks in at this level. So what needs to change? Well, their breakout has to get better. I've talked about this so much these last couple of years too. I mean, the breakout's been bad. They struggle against strong forechecks, and they don't clear out rebounds. I mean, that's just what it is. The D-zone play is bad, and I don't know if it's the boys are maybe getting a little bit too old to kind of hang with some of these young teams. It might be. I mean, looking up and down the Caps lineup, they're not a young team by any stretch. Are they too tired? Are they too slow? Is everybody just too old to hang with all the young kids that are, in this league? Maybe. I'll get into that. But for these 3 games, man, this was, goodness gracious, this was nasty. I mean, didn't really expect great things in New York. Didn't really expect great things against the Leafs, but I would think you could at least go to Philly and make a respectable effort, and they didn't do that. I mean, they can't put it together for 60 minutes. They had a really good first period against the Leafs and fizzled out by the end, and just this second and third period were just awful. I mean, the whole game against the Rangers was bad. Most of the game against Philly was bad. I'm starting to think, and I'm getting concerned, and maybe I'll contradict this a little bit as I get into tonight's game against the Hurricanes, but it's just not good. I mean, this team just doesn't look like they're built to win a Stanley Cup, or even make the playoffs for that matter. If you look at the current standings, and I'll pull them up here in a second, but this Caps team, they are just inviting somebody to climb their way back into this playoff race. They're almost like saying, Columbus, come here, come catch us, come make this thing interesting. I mean, if we take a real long, hard look at this standing as it sits, this is not quite current, it is not updated as of the Caps game this evening, but this is where this gives you a really good idea. Columbus is not far behind the Caps. I mean, figure the Caps have been on a tough stretch. If this continues, and Columbus is kind of starting to heat up, if these two teams continue to trend this direction, a couple weeks, Columbus may be in front of the Caps. That's just what this is. So, is it me throwing shade at the boys? A little bit. I mean, you're expected to be a playoff team. You're expected to be a contender, and here you are. I mean, they might have built up enough at the beginning of the season, and coupled with Columbus's poor start, they may be okay. But that brings us to another issue. I mean, come playoff time, I don't have confidence in this team against anybody they could face. I mean, they beat the Hurricanes on Thursday night. I mean, that's a good thing. Maybe they can beat the Hurricanes. I don't know. But do I think they're better than the Pittsburgh Penguins? No. Do I think they're better than Florida? No. Are they better than Tampa? No. Better than Boston? Probably not. That's what it is. That's what it is. So I'm gonna get some good here and put the venom on pause here for a second. But Thursday night, I gotta be honest, I was expecting this team to get slaughtered. Like, Carolina's coming in off an OT loss in Detroit. They're probably a little bit pissed off that it didn't quite bounce their way. And you're coming to Capital One Arena, where the Caps have lost 6 consecutive games before this evening. And they're a struggling team, and it just seems like a right opponent to get everything back to normal with. And the Caps shocked me. They did. They played a fantastic hockey game. Fantastic. The power play looked great. They were good in their own zone. They had a couple gaffes, but Vanacek was there to bail him out. Vitek makes his first start since the 1st of February. So, this was a great game for the guys. I mean, I'll need a few more of performances like this regardless of result, but good play like this is what we need to see. And if they can keep this going, I mean, maybe Mantha was the missing piece, who knows, but if they can find a way to sustain this, they'll be fine. We'll see. I mean, they get Anthony Mantha back. They get Vitek Vanacek back on Thursday. Those are two big pieces for this team. I mean, Vanacek, I would argue at this point, is probably the more solid of the two goalies, or I would say Vanacek's a little bit more like high or low. Like, he's either going to be really good or he's going to be really bad, and he doesn't have a lot of in-between. Vanacek probably doesn't range as much in his performances. He's a little bit more solid. So, this was a great game for the Caps. I can't say it enough how excited I was, how impressed I was by how they handled this game. Third period, they just go into the defensive posture. They give up a fair few shots, but a lot from the outside. They were able to clear those rebounds away in front of Vanacek when they did come. You got all 5 guys helping out in front of the net, making sure it's a numbers game in their favor. And maybe that's how they need to play it. I mean, great performance from the Caps this evening. I hope to up and down, and just I hope so much this continues, because this is what this team needs. If they can do this, I have a lot more confidence and a lot more hope and a lot more faith that they'll make the playoffs, and they may make a push when the time comes. But this is just one game. I mean, this downward slump, this just absolute crater of a slump the Caps have gotten themselves into, this has been going on for a few months. I mean, you got to look back to like mid-December, the last time they really, really looked like the Washington Capitals that we all know and love, and hope that they can find their way to being. So that's what it is. I mean, it's one game. It's one game. Yes, I'm very excited, and I hope all the Caps fans out there are. I mean, we as fans, quite frankly, I think we needed this a little bit. The players damn sure needed it. They needed a bit of a confidence boost. And I think Laviolette needed it. I think his seat was heating up real quick. And that's going to kind of give way to, getting back into the negative here. Laviolette, I've seen a ton of talk that how hot is the seat for Peter Laviolette right now? It's only his second season. He's not even 2 years into this with this team, and already, there's speculation that he could be fired. I mean, maybe the whole thing is his fault. It's not his fault. I'm here to tell you, undoubtedly, very clearly, this is not on Peter Laviolette. He walked into this situation. This roster has not really changed on his watch. It's changed a little bit, but it's largely the same, and the results on the ice are the same. If management had gone out over the summer and overhauled the roster and made some big trades and some big signings, and the results were still the same, then maybe you can pin it on Laviolette. But at this point, I just don't think you can. But there is somebody you can blame for this. And I've defended him in the past. Granted, he's the only GM in Caps history to have won a Stanley Cup. But Brian MacLellan, your team building skills are in full focus. For every fan, and I certainly hope for Caps owner Ted Leonsis, the work that MacLellan has done assembling this hockey team is being watched very closely, because Laviolette controls, obviously, lines for games, in-game strategy, practice, schedule, all that kind of stuff, but he doesn't control the roster he's given. He has to take whatever roster that MacLellan puts together and management puts together and make it work on the ice. And we've seen, I mean, Todd Reardon couldn't do it. Laviolette so far hasn't been able to do it. 2 head coaches, 4 years, this hasn't really worked out since they've won the cup. Now, I'm going to dive into this a little bit deeper. I think it's time you can't blame a coach. My theory for general managers is, okay, you didn't re-up Trotz. Okay, you let him walk, so you bring your guy in. Your guy doesn't work out, so he's fired. Okay, now you've gone through 2. This is 3 now. I think at this point in the Caps development, I think Peter Laviolette is the right coach for this team. Whether or not Brian MacLellan is the right GM at this point remains to be seen. So why am I so sour on Brian MacLellan all of a sudden? Well, looking at the team on the ice, I mean, they look old, they look slow, they look just tired. They look out of gas. I mean, when you look at teams, I would categorize the Washington Capitals this way. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, the Washington Capitals are an average to okay team, good team, that used to be a really good team, that used to be a great team. That's what it is. This team has declined from that elite status. That's just what it is. And as a GM, it's your job to keep them there or blow it up and hit the rebuild. The one thing you don't want to be in any sports league, in any pro league, is get stuck in the mushy middle. And why is that? Well, draft position is probably the biggest part of it, and playoff contention. There's 2 big pieces here. So if you're not good enough to make a push in the playoffs, you're not really progressing or working toward anything. But if you're not bad enough to get, you know, a good opportunity at a top 10 or a top 5 pick, or even the number 1 pick, you're just kind of stuck in this weird limbo. I mean, you're maybe good enough to make the first round of the playoffs, but you never really do anything when you get there. That about sums the Caps up these last couple of years. It's an interesting situation to be in. So for MacLellan, what do? I mean, you win the cup in 18, and from there, okay, you have to look at the team and, you know, look at your core. I mean, obviously Ovechkin, Backstrom, Karlsson, Kuznetsov, Wilson is probably in there as well, probably the core 5. I would say Braden Holtby was a part of that core, but obviously he's not, and between Vanacek and Samsonov, we don't know yet. So I'll say the core 5. The thing here, you have to look at the contracts that McLellan's doled out. Okay, obviously Backstrom's re-signed, Ovechkin's re-signed, Karlsson's re-signed, Kuznetsov, Wilson re-signed before the cup. You're committing to going with these guys again, and going, you know, you re-upped Ovi for 5 years, you re-upped Backstrom for 5 or 6, you re-upped Karlsson for 8. You're committing to going with these guys. Okay, fine. So what does that all mean? Well, that means you have to put the pieces around these guys, because you're not going to trade them. And I mean, Ovi might command some trade value. I don't know what the value would be for Backstrom at this point. I don't think you're trading Karlsson at this point. He's still very much in that elite status of NHL defenseman. So it's up to MacLellan to find those supplemental pieces that are you have to push the right buttons as a general manager. And since that cup run, he hasn't done that. He's put the Caps in this win now mode by these re-signings, but he hasn't put the pieces around this core to give them another realistic shot. That's what I'm getting at. He's put this team in the win now mode and hasn't put a win now team on the ice, in my opinion. Yes, he's gone out and acquired some guys. I mean, I think he just has a thing for former Penguins. I mean, you look, you know, Justin Schultz, Daniel Sprong, Connor Sherry, Carl Hagelin. I mean, these were all guys that were part of the Pittsburgh Penguins for those back-to-back cup runs. I mean, Sprong not as much. He was kind of up and down in the minors, but these are the guys that dashed your cup dreams for 2 years, and I don't know if he's evaluating them based on that time versus instead of where he should be evaluating them, which is now. Justin Schultz is good. He is not what he was in 16 and 17. I can tell you that. Same with Carl Hagelin. He's a very solid fourth-line player. He was playing third line with Kessel with the Penguins. He is not at that level anymore. And Sprong, pretty good. I think they got what they bargained for with Sprong. And Sherry as well. I can't say all the ideas are bad, but Looking at MacLellan and the teams he's built, I would say he's made some good trades. Obviously, I mean, the Oshie deal, the signings of Matt Niskanen and Brooks Orpik were instrumental to the Caps winning the Cup eventually. But when you look at this team and the core group of it and kind of the impact players, yes, there are some good players on this team, but it's not by MacLellan's doing that they're there. I mean, let's keep in mind, all the core players I just named, Ovechkin, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Wilson, Carlson, I can even throw Orlov in here, were all George McPhee draft picks. To find talents that have been drafted under Brian MacLellan, you got to look in the net at these two projects of goaltenders that we apparently have. I like them both, but neither one has proved themselves to be the solid number one yet. Connor McMichael, I think with the right guys around him and with the right push, he could absolutely be a star NHL player. And Martin Ferravari, I think this is probably the best and most, you've gotten the most out of this guy, looking at where you drafted him. Drafted him second round, but he is, he's ready to go. He's an NHL defenseman. So this is kind of the first MacLellan prospect that is fully developed that we've seen. And this team is not the best at drafting and developing players. We've seen that. These young guys seem to waste away in the minors and never really get a good shot. I mean, we've got Stillhap, Shane Gersich, Alex Alexia, Brian Pino, Lucas Johansson all sitting in Hershey because they've never really gotten a shot at the NHL level. This team is not good at developing young prospects. They leave them to waste away in the minors until their mid-20s, and then the players eventually leave at free agency because, well, I can go be an NHL player on another team because I'll get a shot. The Caps don't give their young guys that shot. Is that all MacLellan's fault? No, probably not. But that's a situation for the Caps developing. Drafting for MacLellan, jury's still out. I think some of his picks have been bust. Hendrix Lapierre looks like he should be an NHL superstar, but we'll see. I mean, he was having an okay year. They sent him back to junior. It was probably a good call. He's been awesome. He got cut from Team Canada's Olympic roster or World Junior roster, before that whole thing blew up after they played about 2 games. He's been fantastic in the QMJHL, part of the Canadian Hockey League, for those who don't know, averaging over 1.5 points per game since then. He's been great. Now, does junior success translate to the NHL? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. But to get back on track, the way this team is built, they're built to win now. Unless MacLellan wants to make some earth-shattering trades, which would, to me, I mean, the players that would get you the most value at this point, we know Ovi's not going anywhere, but Kuzi and John Carlson would probably be the 2 guys that would command the most in return. Do you want to make that move? Probably not. But unless he's willing to do that, you're going with it with what you got, which means it's up to him to put the right players around this core group. That's just what it is. Nothing's really changed these last few years for this team. So at some point you have to look at it and say, okay, maybe it's the way this roster's built. I mean, we've gone through a couple coaches, it hasn't worked. We know this core can win, they've done it before, but look at the players around them. Doesn't need to change. I don't know yet. I think maybe it does. I think maybe it's time for a change, but we'll see. He's already said they're going to be conservative at the trade deadline. So we have a long way to go. The Caps have a long way to go to convince, I think, any Caps fan, certainly myself, and I think anybody out there, that they're a realistic shot to win the Stanley Cup. I mean, like I've said, Thursday was a great game, but there's a long way to go. They have to win probably 4 or 5 more like that to really, really convince me that they're ready to run again. So We'll see. I mean, maybe Anthony Mantha was the missing piece. His first night back, they played great. We have to wait and see. So to wrap this all up in a pretty little package and slap a bow on it, Brian MacLellan. The next time the Caps struggle, the Caps lose a game, the Caps get blown out, whatever it might be, look at Brian MacLellan. I would expect, if anybody's going to get fired, I think Laviolette's eventually going to, if anybody gets fired, Laviolette's probably going to wear the bullet for this, unfortunately, but I think he needs to take MacLellan with him. Because we've seen it. I mean, they've gone through Reardon. If Laviolette gets fired, they will have gone through 2 coaches with virtually the same roster. That's a sign to me that it's not the coach's fault. It's on the GM and whoever the hell else is building this roster. So what's going to change? I think they're in win now mode. And if that's the case, then MacLellan needs to identify the moves and identify what he needs to do, whether it's trades, whether it's signings. And by the way, 1 or 2 trades I don't think is just going to fix this team. It's going to take some big moves. It's going to take an Oshie trade, a Carlson trade, a Kuznetsov trade, and some signings. I mean, you have to... This is not just a simple tweak and a fix, I don't think, for this team. It's going to be a big overhaul. And are they going to do that? Doubt it. But if this roster is not going to work as it is, MacLellan is going to have to take a risk and do something to try to shove this team from average, adequate, just kind of okay, back into that elite status of the NHL. Back with the Lightning, back with the Penguins, back with the Hurricanes, back with the Avalanche. That is what I feel is coming. If we've got 4 more years of Ovi, and you know, I can't envision him wearing any other jersey in the NHL than a Capitals jersey. And I think it would be an absolute crime if he were to break Gretzky's record in any jersey except a Capitals jersey. But can you honestly expect the greatest goal scorer in NHL history to stick around for the last hurrah of his career, basically, to lose on a team that refuses to change? I can't, and I wouldn't if I was in his shoes. If I'm coming down to the last year or 2 on that contract and this team is getting worse and it doesn't look like it's going to improve, I'd be trying to get out of there. Go win another cup. If it's not with the Capitals, fine. Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves just yet. We've got some time. I'm certainly not advocating for an Ovechkin trade anytime in the next couple years. However, if the time comes, if by some stroke of luck that MacLellan is still the GM 2 years from now and they're still this way, who knows? Make an Ovi trade, make the man happy, let him go out with a bang. But that's all speculation, that's all hearsay. One thing I can say for sure. Changes need to be made to this roster. I say that now. Now, if they go out and win, like I said, if they go out and win 5-6 games and look as convincing as they did tonight, I'll change my tune. I hope it happens. But this team has been, we've seen this same tailspin. This team has hit each of the last, this will be year 4. They play really well early in the season. They're burning up the league. And then come mid to late December, they run out of gas. Coast to the finish and get killed in the playoffs. I'm hoping not to see that this year. And I think if that happens this year, then MacLellan probably needs to get fired. I understand if MacLellan's getting fired, Laviolette is probably going with him. But something needs to change. If this team can't turn it around this year and make a change, make a difference, win a playoff series, look good coming down the stretch going into the playoffs, things are going to need to change. So that's what I'm looking for. A lot of negativity today. I'm going to finish it up here. Joe Snively on injured reserve to hit some Caps news. Carl Hagelin is hit the long-term IR, might be done for the season with an eye injury he sustained in practice. Ilya Samsonov is out. He was injured during Wednesday's practice. Mantha comes back, Oshie's back, Vanacek's back, and 3 more down. It's just going to continue. I mean, maybe nobody gets fired this year because they haven't had a healthy roster all year, and it doesn't look like they're going to have one. So we'll wait and see. It's the name of the game. It's the phrase of the day for Caps Hockey Review. We'll wait and see. Are they going to find a way to put some wins together? Or are they going to continue just digging themselves deeper into this crater that they found themselves in? Can they work their way out and get back to being where they need to be and where they're expected to be? Time's going to tell, folks. Time is going to tell. We'll wrap it up. We'll take a little spin around the NHL just quickly here. Big news of the week for the NHL. On the heels of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, NHL has basically eliminated any business dealings with Russia, their expansion of hockey in the East, helping the expansion of hockey into China. The Global Series was supposed to be in Moscow. I don't believe it was either this coming year or the one after. That will not happen now. This is an ugly situation, and this has grabbed headlines in every aspect of life, not just sports. But it's really a tough time, I think, for all these Russian NHL players. They're seeing their endorsement deals postponed or paused. It's a really tough situation. Alex Ovechkin scores on Thursday night, and the crowd chants Ovi, showing that they stand behind him. And I think I and every other NHL fan is still standing with these players. They were not the ones involved in any of this, and I don't think they should be held responsible for it. But that's the nature of the world too. So it's unfortunate. It sucks. Hopefully there's a peaceful resolution on the horizon. Who knows if there will be? I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm not a political show. I am a hockey show, and that's how it's going to stay. Getting to one more piece of news for the Caps. A new name has emerged in a potential goalie trade for the Caps. Now, MacLellan has said they're going to be conservative at the deadline. But you mean to tell me if our old buddy Semyon Varlamov, the New York Islanders are struggling mightily, and their odds to make the playoffs, I think, are just about zilch. And Varlamov's on the last year of a contract. He's looking to win. Now, is Washington the place for him to do that? I don't know, but I certainly think he can help turn it around here. Great goalie. Obviously has matured quite a bit from his early days in the league with the Capitals. That's an interesting trade. I kind of like that. I like that better than a Holtby deal at this point, honestly. I mean, I would argue at this point Varlamov is a better goalie than Braden Holtby is. So I'd like to see it. I don't think it'll happen. I think with this whole conservative attitude, the Caps are going to try. I think they're very aware of where they are in the standings and what they've been on the ice. I think the idea here is just not to give up too many draft picks or anything like that. If you do miss the playoffs or get knocked out right away, at least you still have your first round pick, and you didn't spend it on a Kevin Shattenkirk. You remember how good that deal went? That was a MacLellan deal. Yeah. I'm ending with some venom today. I'm going to wrap it up here before I start yelling. Until next time, my friends, go Caps.